All right, good morning. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Karibuni sana. Welcome to the Afriforex weekly swing. Hope you've been well since the last time we were together. I know last week we did meet on a bit of a break, but I hope you guys did end up catching up with the recording that we did end up doing. But really glad that you could join us. Hope you enjoyed your break as well. Now we're back to business. So if you're new here, John Wogo is my name. I'm a trader at Afriforex. I'm joined alongside Mitch. Mitch, how are you doing?
I'm good. Glad to be here. At least it was a well-deserved break, so hopefully we can come back to the charts swinging, at least for the next few weeks or so. So yeah, let's hope we can get some good opportunities as well.
All right. So remember, guys, if you do have questions, make sure that you do let us know on the Q&A section. We'll be looking at them towards the tail end of this session. And of course, for the guys who are going to be watching this on YouTube, make sure that you like and subscribe, and also make sure that you turn on the bell notification so that you get notified anytime we do have new content on our channel. And also remember, for guys who are also here, you still can also end up watching the recording. At least a good thing about this one, it's not like the daily analysis. If you miss out on something, you can definitely go and watch on YouTube, and at least you can keep watching and rewatching even for the remainder of the week. You still can end up picking up some things that you possibly did end up missing out within this session. All right, so we're going to jump straight into it. So you can see the watch list for this week. We're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities on the US dollar, on the euro. We'll be trying to see whether we can get some selling opportunities on the Australian dollar, the Japanese yen, and also on the New Zealand dollar. For the guys who are new here, how this works is you can see the various currency pairs here, certain numbers that we've designated right here, and how we come up with this is through correlation. So we look at the overall picture of what's happening with a particular group, like for example, the USD pair. And if we generally see that a number of them are showing strength, then that tells us that the big boys are possibly interested in buying that. So anything above 4, all the way till a 7, we consider that a buy. Anything from a -4 all the way down till a -7, that's considered as weak and should be looking for sells. Anything between a 3 and a -3 is considered neutral. So for that kind of pairs, we can easily end up mixing and matching them up with anything that's on the buy or the sell, because they can be dragged either way. And remember that this is not like the daily analysis. We don't mix and match up the buys versus the sells. It's only the sells versus the neutrals, the buys versus the neutrals, but we also have gold and the Dow Jones, which are more or less standalone. So whichever side they end up being, that's exactly what it's going to be. So hopefully you've taken note of this, and feel free to take screenshots even as we continue moving along. We're going to start off with gold and the Dow Jones. So for gold this week, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some sell. And that's going to be the case for as long as we're holding below that region at the top right there. We should be looking to see whether we can get some selling opportunities. Also make sure that you take note of these 3 regions right here, or other 2 regions where you could potentially end up also managing your trades. Right now, the market is more or less within a buyer's region. Don't really look for your selling opportunities now. Say that one of 2 scenarios. Either the market is going to break this region to the downside, possibly end up pulling back in within this region right here, and we could try and see whether we could get some selling opportunities right here. Hopefully the downward momentum that's been coming in could potentially end up carrying on, but we need to wait and see whether we can get a breach of this region to the downside. If we can't get that, then unfortunately, we'll possibly just have to end up waiting to see what happens. But any sells right now could be a bit risky. Now, we could also possibly end up expecting the buyers to possibly end up doing something, and you could find that maybe for the earlier part of the week, today being Monday, you could find that maybe even on Wednesday, price, if it does end up pulling back in, you could potentially find the market back in within this region right here. You could find the sells working off this area here. Possibly we do end up getting some sort of a price action signal in this region. Just be on the lookout, see what happens, especially if we get a false breach to the upside. Hopefully end up inciting some buyers to come in. Then the market comes back in and holds within this region. You could potentially find the sells backing in. So make sure that you watch out for that. Watch out for the region at the top as well. Could find the pullback coming in deeper all the way till the top there. But ideally right now, based on where the price is and also the structure, the best bet is possibly somewhere within this region right here. So just make sure that you do watch out for that, and hopefully you take a note of that. So the next one is the Dow Jones. So for this one, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So hopefully we can end up taking note of these three regions right here. So these are areas where we could look for buys and also areas where we will potentially be also managing our trades depending on what happens, and hopefully the market comes in within these regions. So for this one, we're looking for buys. You can see that the market is within an area of support, which is a good thing. So we could potentially find the market taking off from within this region right here. You can see that the market has actually attempted to break this region to the downside quite a number of times, but it's been unsuccessful. So you could find the market rising off that region, but it still could come back in within here, and you could find it possibly attempting to break to the downside one last time before the market actually takes off the upside. But ideally, if you're going to be looking for buys now, the best area to potentially have your stop loss is somewhere within here. If you end up having it somewhere within here, there's a possibility you could actually end up getting stopped out, before the market actually makes a move. So make sure that you watch out for that. Now, on the other hand, if let's say these prices are not good enough, and you can see that the buyers have really struggled to push the price off this area quite a number of times, if the market breaks to the downside, and let's say you didn't check into the buy there, and the market doesn't come back to the upside of this region to look for the buy to go up, then that means that maybe the market might actually come back in within this region at the bottom right here. So in case that does end up happening, then you could potentially try and see whether you could get your buys working off this area here. You could find that maybe later on in the week, that's where the market could find the market possibly lifting off that region to the upside. So just make sure that you do watch out for those two possibilities. Definitely remember to manage your trades within these two areas, or wherever the market or wherever you end up getting the buys working off from. And if you're really good at trading, you could potentially also end up scaling in even as you do end up managing your trades. In case the market breaks below this region to the downside, then it means that the buying opportunities could potentially end up being null and void, but also depending on how the market breaks and falls to the downside, then maybe you could potentially try and see whether you could get some selling opportunities on this one. But for right now, fast is to look to buy opportunities. So hopefully we take a note of those two commodities. So I guess we can end up getting started on the currency pairs. We'll start off with the Australian dollar, mix and match it up with everything on the neutral, move on to the yen, do the same, the New Zealand dollar, the US dollar. Last but not least, we'll finish off with the euro pairs, mixing and matching them up with everything on the neutral. So the first one for the currency pairs is the Great British Pound against the Australian dollar. So for this one, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. You can see that the market has been coming up quite well, which is good. So these are the three regions where we will potentially be trying to see whether we can get our trades working off from, and also areas where we can manage our trades. You can see that the market has been making a sequence of higher highs and higher lows, which is good. It's just broken this region to the upside. So we're going to be waiting to see what happens within this area here. Could potentially even find the market attempting to break to the downside. If it doesn't, that could be our buy right there. So you could watch out for that, but just be a bit patient to see what really does happen here. Because if the market breaks below this region to the downside and actually holds below it, then it means that the price could potentially be coming back into the red SNR somewhere within this region right here. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. Be a bit patient. You could find that maybe for the first part or the earlier part of the week, the market could be on the pullback. Maybe from tomorrow, could find the buys working. And we've seen that a lot, most recently on the chart. So you find that Tuesday, Wednesday, that's when the opportunities really do end up working out. But it doesn't mean that you can't watch out for today. Still could potentially find that some opportunities could potentially end up working out today. So just make sure that you're also on the lookout for that. So for this one, this is what the plan is going to be looking like. Remember the red SNR, in case the market breaks that region to the downside, then unfortunately there will be no trade for us. So moving on into the next one, this is the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get sell. For guys who are new to trading, bear in mind that the Australian dollar on this one, it's on the left. Remember on the other one, it's on the right. So if we're going to be looking to see whether we can sell on this one, then it means that we should be buying Great British Pound. But on this particular currency pair, since the Australian dollar is on the left, it's the base currency pair. So it's the basis for what we're doing. So we should be selling this. So you can see that this one, the market has been coming down quite well. We're more or less within a region where we do have some buyers. Not a really good time to look for your selling opportunities. So you could either wait and see, get the market coming back in within this region at the top there, could potentially look for your selling opportunities there, but just make sure that you manage your trade somewhere within this region right here. Could potentially be an area where you could run into issues. On the other hand, if let's say these buyers really do end up struggling within this region right here, they can't really move this market to the upside, then we'll be waiting to see whether we can get a breach to the downside. If you do get a pullback where the market actually holds to the downside, that could potentially be yourself. Definitely remember to manage your trade within here, even if you could be targeting areas much, much lower. Of course, if it does break to the downside of this region, if you do get a nice pullback, still holds within there, you could end up scaling in and try and see how much more further you could go with that. So make sure that you do watch out for those three regions. And of course, that's what the plan is going to be looking like, the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. So the last Australian dollar pair is the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, we're also going to be trying to see whether we can get some sells. So hopefully we can end up taking note of these three regions right here. So we do have this mid level right there, and we do have more or less like a conservative region somewhere within here. This one has also been coming down quite well. But of course, hopefully we do get a pullback on this one, then that would be good. Because right now, looking for the sells could be a bit tricky. Could find that the market could potentially end up giving a pullback. Maybe you could find the pullback coming in all the way till within this region at the top here, before you do potentially find the sells working out. But right now, since it's more or less within a region of support, the best thing is to actually wait and see if you can first get the market breaking to the downside of this region. If it does pull back in within here, maybe even attempts to break to the upside of that region and it's unsuccessful, then that might be much better. This sell will possibly give you lesser issues than this one, especially if the market breaks and just holds within this region here. It might be a setup for something, because a lot of people will, at that point in time, be looking to see whether they can jump in on their sells, but they don't realize that they're selling when it's too late. Maybe the buyers or the sellers need to get some sort of a refresh, whereby some new buyers are first going to come in before the sellers will end up coming in. So be a bit careful about that. At least if it does break and actually move to the downside, don't feel bad about missing out on this trade coming down. Remember, it's always best wait for the pullback. So just make sure that you put your FOMO in check and just wait for the pullback. So hopefully this is what we're expecting to see. But also remember that the pullback could also come in maybe as deep as all the way up within this region. Really inciting a lot of buyers to come in, stopping out all the late sellers within this region right here. You could find that later on in the week, the market could actually end up giving a really good selling opportunity. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. And hopefully you've taken note of what the plan is going to be looking like on the Australian dollar pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the yen pairs, mix and match them up with everything on the neutral. So we'll start off with the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen. So Mitch, you're ready.
Yeah. So here on the British Pound against the Japanese yen, since we are looking to sell the yen pairs, that means on the yen pairs here, on all of them are the counter currencies. It means we want to buy all of them. And we can see the overall flow. This market has been going to the upside. So we do know we want to end up looking for buying opportunities. Right now, we're back within an area where they're sellers. So we don't want to jump in on any buying opportunities just yet. The main thing we'll most likely see is a pullback coming in. So we'll possibly wait for the price to either come back down, give us some sort of probe within the first support and resistance area that we do have. And we could potentially end up seeing some sort of buying opportunity coming in once we do end up getting that pullback. Now, the pullback can come in within this middle SNR. But you can see we do have three levels that we do have. So the red support and resistance area is the last place we'll end up looking for buying opportunities, meaning the price can still be able to come all the way down towards the bottom area, do something similar before we do end up getting some sort of buying opportunity as well. So we could end up waiting for one of those two options. But be aware, just because we're within an area where there's sellers, that doesn't mean that the buyers might not still be able to actually take this price up higher. So you could end up finding, because even as John has explained on the other Australian dollar pairs, the sellers are not able to react. And we do see the buyers breaching this resistance area to the upside and the price holds above, then we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities if that does end up happening. But for right now, we either want to see a pullback, which would be ideal for us, especially once we do get a pullback, gives us more profit potential and a better risk to reward. However, since the markets move however they want, if we do get the price breaching and holding above, chances are we can continue looking for those buying opportunities. Now, the benefit is all these yen pairs, or at least the yen pairs, are usually very correlated. So they always end up moving sort of similar. So if we do end up seeing this price breaking it and holding above, chances are we could end up seeing the other ones doing as well. So I guess we can end up moving on to the other pairs, the yen pairs. We can end up having a look at them. So as you can see here, we do have the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. We can see the same flow to the upside, where the price did end up pushing all the way to the upside right here with this push above. So you can see the way the market did manage to start going to the upside within that area. But since you can see the same pattern, or at least the same thing we looked at within the British pound against the Japanese yen, right now we're back within an area where they're sellers. So if these sellers don't react, we could see the price breaching and holding above for us to look for our buying opportunities. But remember, always wait for that pullback to come in within the support and resistance area for us to look for the buying opportunities. Now, it's a similar situation with the other yen pair we had a look at. Chances are if these sellers do end up coming in, which is chances are if that's what we want to see, and we do end up getting some sort of probe or price action signal, then we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities as well. Now, since we do want to buy, and remember, as long as we're holding above the red support and resistance area, our bias here should always be looking for buying opportunities. So the price can still come back down and hold below, at least come back within the support, red support and resistance area before we're able to look for buying opportunities. But right now, remember, if the price breaches and hold below the red SNR, then ideally this pair will fall off our watch list. You can see this huge probe that did happen right there at the bottom. Could end up finding that the market, due to the fact that there's a support and resistance area there, but as long as the price is holding above that, we should be looking for a buy. If the price breaches and hold below there, then this pair will fall off our watch list. So I guess we can move on to the next yen pair. Chances are they'll possibly be the same. As we can see here, the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen, similar situation. We are looking for buying opportunities, but similar situation, we're back within this area where they're sellers. So since we do want to look for those buying opportunities, ideally right now we're within the area where the sellers, the price is able to breach and hold above, then we should be able to look for those buying opportunities. But remember, you should see that on all the other pairs. If all of them, one of them starts breaching to the upside, have a look at also the other pairs, as you could end up finding them breaking to the upside. Now, similar situation, if we do get the price giving us some sort of pullback coming in within the support and resistance area, potentially we could see a buying opportunity there. And you can see the same story is the same with all these yen pairs. If this middle support and resistance area doesn't hold, chances are we could even be coming all the way down towards the extreme area before we are able to look for those buying opportunities. So just watch out for that. Wait to see the correlation that is going to happen on these yen pairs, and we can be able to take advantage of that. Yeah.
All right, so I hope guys have taken note of what the plan is going to be looking like on the yen pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the next set of currency pairs, which are the New Zealand dollar pairs. We're going to mix and match them up with everything that's neutral. So the first one is the Great British Pound against the New Zealand dollar. So for this one, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So hopefully you can end up taking note of these three regions right here. I can see that the market has been coming up quite well, but also something to do with the New Zealand dollar pair showing a lot of weakness, especially towards the later part of last week. So you can see how the market really took off from this area to the upside. Let's see if we can get that pullback coming in. It seems like it's already started. So we could potentially find the market coming back in within here, could find it bounce off here, could look for the buys, at least if it does end up tapping back within this region here. We do see a slowdown of the sellers and the buyers coming in. We could try and see whether we could get some buys, but there's also a possibility you could find the market just tapping within this area right here. But ideally, if you end up looking for the buys within this region, yes, you could. Let me say that. But you could also find that you could easily end up getting squeezed within here because this is a major level on the bigger time frame. But when you end up looking at the smaller time frame, you could still end up finding that the market could potentially tap within this region. So just make sure that you're a bit careful in terms of how you go about it within here. But ideally, the best buys could be somewhere within here. Now, the market could also pull back in all the way to within this region at the bottom right here. It's still a potential. You still could watch out for that. So if that happens, you could look for the buys there. But also looking at how the market has been going up. If let's say the market doesn't come back in within here, then you could potentially wait and see if you could get a breach to the upside of this area right here. If you do, and a nice strong breach the upside, then you could potentially try and see whether you could get your buying opportunities, especially on the pullback somewhere within here. But if you just barely breaks to the upside of this area, holds within here, it might be a setup So don't really end up jumping into those buying opportunities just yet. So hopefully you take a note of that. And remember the red SNR, that's more or less like the last area where we will be trying to see whether we can get some aggressive buying opportunities. So the next one is the New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get sell. And bear in mind that the New Zealand dollar on this one is to the left. So it's the base currency pair, like the last currency pair that we looked at, which it was on the right. So the counter currency pair. So for this one, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some selling opportunities. You can see that the market is pulling back off this region here, which is also something that we've seen on the Great British Pound against the New Zealand dollar. So potentially could be some pullbacks that are coming in for the NZDs. So let's see if we can get this pullback coming in somewhere as close as possible within here. If we do end up getting the price coming back in somewhere as close as possible within this area right here, we do see a slowdown of the buyers and the sellers are now really starting to come in. If even the market attempts to break to the upside but still holds below here, we'll try and see whether we could get our selling opportunities there. But also remember that the pullback can also happen all the way to the top here, some sort of a deep pullback. So just be on the lookout for that. There are a bunch of seller regions within this area here. You could find that even if the market comes shy off that, there still could come in somewhere within this region here. You could still find the sales working out. But right now, based on where the price is, this is the nearest point of reference that we do have. So just watch out for that. Now, if the market doesn't get all the way there, and let's say get some sort of a U-turn, somewhere within this region here, because it's also possible. It's possibly better, unless maybe if you do read the story on a smaller time frame, like the 1 hour time frame, to really end up getting those sales within here. But you'll still end up facing issues within this area here, because you might not really end up getting too much range in terms of risk to reward. So it would be better to possibly either wait for the market to break to the downside of this region. If it does end up giving a nice strong reach, and the weakness of the New Zealand dollar does really start to show up. If you do get the pullback coming back in within here, I think that sell right there will possibly give you less issues and give you more range compared to trying to attempt selling opportunities within this area when the market is just holding above this region here. So make sure that you watch out for that. And of course, once again, remember the red SNR at the top. It's a long shot. Seems like it's quite far, but you could find that the market could be on the pullback phase, maybe even for the earlier part of the week. And you could find that maybe later on in the week, once the market does set itself up properly, you could find that the selling opportunities could end up working out, maybe even Thursday. We've also seen the chart, really moving a lot even on Fridays, which most of the time you wouldn't really expect the market to move much then. So just make sure that you also do watch out for that. So last but not least, for the NZD pairs, we have the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, I'm going to also be trying to see whether we can get sales. Similar story. So you can see that the pullbacks are happening on the NZDs, just like we've seen on the other two. So definitely tells us that there's something up with the NZD. So watch out for that. In case the market pulls back in within there, you could also find the pullback going all the way to the top here. It's also a possibility. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But in case the pullback doesn't come in all that way, just like we spoke about on the New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar, don't really attempt your selling opportunities too late within this region here, because you're just holding above this support area. The risk to reward might not really be worth it. So wait and see if you can get a breach to the downside and a nice strong breach. The market breaks and just holds within here. It could easily end up being a setup. So just make sure that you do wait for a nice strong breach, nice pullback coming in, maybe even an attempt to break to the upside, which ends up being unsuccessful, could end up coming down with the market. But just make sure that you take note of the lowest part of where the market gets down, especially once it breaks to the downside, because that could also end up being your next problem area. So just make sure that you do watch out for that, but the bias is to look for selling opportunities. So that's pretty much it for the NZD pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the USD pair. So we can start off with the Great British Pound against the US dollar. So over to you, Mitch.
Yeah, so the British Pound against the US dollar, in this kind of pair, we do want to look for selling opportunities. Now, overall, we can see the overall flow of the market has been coming down lower. As you can see right there, the market has been on the way down. But you can also realize that at the moment, the market does seem to be in a range, bouncing between these two levels right here. So we do have the middle level, or at least the middle support and resistance area, and the bottom level where we are right now. So since the market is potentially within a range, Ideally, right now, we're at the bottom of the range, and we do know if we're looking for sells, the best place to look for a sell within our range is at the top of the range. So we could end up seeing the price potentially coming up, giving us some sort of pullback within this particular support and resistance area before we do end up seeing that selling opportunity coming in. Now, we do know overall, we should be looking for selling opportunities as long as we're holding below the red SNR. So even though you do find the price coming up higher, potentially even breaching above the range, maybe inciting multiple people to end up looking for those buying opportunities. And you could end up finding the market reacting from that top area before we do see the sells coming in. Now, we've mentioned this a number of times, but if we do end up finding that this price ends up being, or at least the sellers are very strong and the buyers are not strong enough, because you can even see how aggressive the sellers have been coming down lower. You can see this big move to the downside, and you can see the pushes of the buyers don't necessarily seem to be doing much. So since we do know we want to end up looking for those sells, right now the sellers could end up coming in. So if you see the price is able to break and hold below, then we should be able to continue looking for those selling opportunities. But we do need to see the price actually holding below this support and resistance area for us to look for those selling opportunities. But for right now, there's nothing for us to do. Right now, we need to wait to see whether or not we can get that pullback coming in, or we can end up waiting for the sell to come down before we can continue looking for those selling opportunities. I hope that's clear. As we move on to the next US dollar pair, the US dollar seems to be quite strong, as you can clearly see the way the market has been on a way move, or at least some move to the upside. So we definitely know we want to look for buying opportunities. But right now, it's a similar situation. Price is back within an area where the sellers. So there's a possibility the price might be able to break this area to the upside. So if you do see the price breaching and holding above, then we can end up looking for a buying opportunity. We don't necessarily want to see something like this where the market looks as if it's breaking to the upside, but it's not really. It ends up attempting to go up, but when it comes back in, it just comes straight back in and does not hold above that area. So we definitely know these are very strong sellers area. So if we are able to get the price breaching and holding above, then we should be able to continue looking for those buying opportunities. Now, right now, since we're within an area where there are sellers, we could end up still seeing the sellers coming in, because remember, there will potentially be some sort of reaction. So hopefully we can end up getting that pullback coming in, giving us some sort of probe or price action signal within this middle support resistance area. Now you can see we're doing a lot of probes. Probes are a very good price action signal, because at that point in time, you know that support area is actually holding, and the big boy buyers are actually interested for us to actually end up getting a probe. That's the reason why you see us doing probes a lot. But remember, you can be able to go down to a smaller time frame, read the pullback on the 1 hour time frame, see how those sellers are coming in, whether or not the market ends up reacting within this area that we have, this yellow support and resistance area, or it could even come all the way down here. Ideally, remember, this is for more long term, or at least this trade is meant to set up throughout the week. So chances are we could end up seeing the price is still coming down all the way to one of these extreme areas before we do look for those buying opportunities. Just wait to see how that pullback comes in before we are able to do that. So hope that's clear. As we move on to the next and last USD pair, which we do have, which is the US dollar against Swiss franc. Now you can see in terms of the overall flow of the market, you can clearly see we're on an upwards channel, or at least an upwards trajectory going to the upside. But you can also realize right now we do seem to be in some sort of range, bouncing between these two levels. So we do know we want to end up looking for those buying opportunities, but it's a similar situation with the British pound against the US dollar, where we are ranging. But since we know we want to buy, and right now we're at the top of the range, this is definitely not the best place to look for those buying opportunities. The only way we can end up looking for the buy is if we are able to get the price breaching, holding above this particular support and resistance area, and that's when we can actually continue looking for those buying opportunities. But remember, since we are within a range, we could still see the prices pulling back, coming back, holding at least above within this particular area before we are able to look for those buying opportunities on the US dollar against Swiss franc. Now, watch out for the correlation with the British pound against the US dollar and the US dollar against Swiss franc. They're both ranging, they're both in an upwards trajectory. So if you see them pulling back and they're both holding below, at least at the bottom of the range, you could end up finding some nice trading opportunities there. But be aware, if they break and hold below, chances are we might end up finding ourselves coming back all the way to the extreme support and resistance area before we're able to look for those buying opportunities. So right now, we just need to be patient, either wait for the pullback to come in or wait for the price to reach and hold above this resistance area for us to continue looking for those buying opportunities.
All right, so that's clear in terms of the USD pairs, what the plan is going to be looking like. So I guess we can end up moving on to the last set of currency pairs, which are the euro pairs. So we'll start off with the euro against the Great British Pound. So for this one, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So hopefully you can end up taking note of these three regions right here. So you can see that the market did end up coming up, challenging that region later last week. Seems like the market did already start to do some sort of a pullback. Let's see whether we can get that pullback coming in somewhere as close as possible within this region. The closer to this area, the better. But you still could find that if you're reading the story on the 1 hour time frame, you could find that the market could easily end up turning off within somewhere within this area here, because it also seems like there's a mini SNR within this region right here. But hopefully, the better it comes in within this area, the better in terms of stop loss. Because ideally, even if you do end up hitting the buys here, if you end up putting your stops anywhere within this region, you're still more or less exposed. That means that the best area to have your stops is here. So the closer it comes in within this region here, and at least your stop loss still remaining here, you can see that the risk to reward is going to be much better. So let's wait and see what happens. There's also a minor SNR somewhere within here. So you could find that hitting your buys within this area here, you could easily end up getting stuck. Because if this ends up being a pro, then you end up hitting your buys there. You could easily end up getting stopped right, and the market could still end up coming back in somewhere within this region right here. So if you're going to also be looking for buys, let's say within this region here, you could easily end up waiting for the break to the upside, could wait for the pullback. At least if you get the buying opportunities here, then you could easily end up possibly trying to see whether your stops could be here. So at least the risk to reward coming up to challenge this region right here will be much better. But ideally, also you could end up waiting for a nice strong breach to the upside. If we end up getting that, then ideally this buy could potentially give you lesser issues than this one right here, because you still have to go against the seller who's sitting somewhere within there. So you could watch out for that, but also remember that the pullback could also come in deep. There's a possibility, especially if the buyers don't really end up showing up within this region here and they need a better price. Could find that the market could easily end up coming in. You can see how aggressively the sellers have started off this move coming down. And you could find that if the buyers really end up struggling within here and also within this region, you could find the market back in within this area for a proper buy, possibly end up happening later on in the week. So just make sure that you do watch out for that and do keep a lookout in case that does end up happening. So the next one is the euro against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, we're also going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities as well. So hopefully you can end up taking note of these three areas right here. You can end up taking a screenshot of that. So we're going to be waiting to see whether we can end up getting some buying opportunities on this one. Consider the market has turned off this area quite aggressively, which could potentially also be something to do with the euros, because we've just seen that on the euro against the Great British Pound. So you could wait and see what happens. We're within a mini buyers area within this region right here, but you could easily end up hitting buys here. Let's say even if you do end up having some really tight stop losses within these regions, but there's a possibility you might not get past this region right here, because these sellers will possibly end up attempting to break their previous record, which is here coming down, especially these aggressive, and that could probably put the price back in within this region right here. So be a bit patient for that to see what happens. You could potentially look for some mini buying opportunities, maybe on the smaller time frame, if you can read what's happening, but just be extra cautious and extra careful about this region here. The best thing would be if the buyers can ideally end up taking off. And let's say if you're in on this buy coming up and you really find that the buyers are really struggling on the way up, you could easily end up closing that trade. Or you could actually wait and see what happens if the market comes in within this area here. If hopefully we get a nice strong reach to the upside and the market picks up some momentum on the pullback within here, this buy will possibly give you lesser issues than this one. Because right now you can see that the sellers are coming in. Maybe the SNR could be somewhere within here, but generally there's some sellers within here who could really give you some issues. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But also remember this region at the bottom right here, there's a possibility if price comes in all the way to within here, you still could find the buys lifting off that area to the upside. And of course, that's going to be the last area where we will be trying to see whether we can get our aggressive buying opportunities. So last but not least, for the currency pairs and more or less for everything, we have the euro against the Swiss franc. So for this one, we're going to be trying to also see whether we can get some buys. And I hope you can end up noting the correlation that's there amongst the euro pairs. You can see that they all did end up making this aggressive turn later last week. This was on Friday. So even for this one, tapped into a seller's region, you can see how aggressively the market came in. Right now we're within a buyer's region. Let's see if we can get the market or the sellers possibly attempting to break this area to the downside. Because you can see how aggressive they came in. The buyers are barely just struggling to push this market to the upside. But let's see what these sellers can do. They do end up attempting to push the market maybe a bit lower. Maybe they might come head on with these guys. They might push the market back up. If the market holds above this region, especially if it does come back in quite aggressively, then you could look for your buying opportunity, and at least this one will give you some really good risk to reward. Now, you could also find that the market could come in lower, all the way down to within this area here, because there's a possibility it can't do that, especially if the price is not good enough within this region right here. You could find that the market could potentially end up coming in all the way, maybe to look for this buy or somewhere within this region here, maybe quite a number of prices that the market needs there before it does actually end up moving to the upside. So make sure that you also do watch out for that. Could find that maybe the proper buy could be somewhere within here, but it's all dependent on where we do see the big boys showing up. If they don't show up here, then we'll just have to wait. Maybe if the market comes in lower, they might actually show up within this region. And even if you're going to be targeting all the way up there, let's say we get the buy here, just make sure that you really do some really good money management within this particular region right here, because you never know if the market could easily end up bouncing off that area to the downside. You could easily end up giving away some profits. So hopefully you've taken note of that. On the euro against the Swiss franc, everything else we've discussed on the euros, as well as everything else we've discussed on the currency pairs. So of course, for the guys who came in late, this is the watch list. This is what we're going to be playing with this week. So hopefully you can end up taking note of that. On the fundamental front, this week, these are the high impact news events that we should be expecting. So tomorrow, you can see that there will be some GBP news for the yen. Maybe that could bring in some volatility for the yen. Just make sure that you watch out for that. Maybe you could find that tomorrow morning the yens have really moved. So be on the lookout for that. But the ones that I think that would really end up moving the markets, we have this one. Wednesday, the interest rate decisions for the NZD. Could find that the NZDs could really move there. We have some CPIs for the Great British Pound. So that means on Wednesday, during the Frankfurt session, or even when we're getting started with the daily analysis, you could really find that the GBPs could be moving, as well as maybe the currency pairs that we're looking at for the swing. So you could watch out for that. We have the FOMC minutes. This one is not really quantitative, but still high impact. Anytime there's FOMC, or anytime there are speeches that are happening in regards to the FOMC, there's always volatility. So you could find that on Wednesday at 9, just be on the lookout to see what happens. You could easily find that the USDs could move. And I think this one as well on Friday, the CPIs for the euros, you could easily end up finding those ones easily also moving the euros quite a lot. So hopefully you take a note of that. So make sure that you're on the lookout for that. Also try and see what happens, the fireworks that happens, hopefully when those news events do end up happening. If you're in on any trades, if you're going to be looking for trades, you could easily end up finding them taking off within those times. So I guess we can look at the Q&A real quick. So I see Wasike Metrin, good to see you. Metrin, you're asking, morning, John, Mitch, a kind follow-up on my request about Dow Jones being included in the daily analysis. Yeah, we'll see what we can end up doing. Today is the first day we are back from the break, so we'll see what we can end up doing in that regard, Metrin. So we've not forgotten about that. So we'll try and see what we can end up doing. So I see Stephen Kimani there saying, hi guys, sorry I'm late, but my question is, I can't find the trading chart on your meeting. Why is it so? Can see what wants to explain. I don't know, Mitch, are you getting what Stephen is saying?
I think you can't see what we're displaying right now. Usually, sometimes that happens with Zoom. Zoom sometimes recently has been giving some technical difficulties. What you're meant to do is, if you do see that happening, you're meant to leave the webinar, then join back again. I wish you had said it earlier so that you would have been able to see that. But at least we know the recording is still going to be out. So you'll still be able to watch and see what pairs are looking.
All right. So apologies for that, Stephen. Just some technological challenges. But Zoom of late has been giving a couple of issues here and there. Sometimes you start webinars late because of issues. and whatnot. But anyway, it's technology. Nothing much you can end up doing about it. But at least the recording is going to be out, so you can definitely watch it. So I see Esther Kabiru there. I think, hello team, welcome back. We missed you. It was so lonely. Yeah, gold, please. I guess you can end up doing that, but we're glad to see you here, Esther, as well. So for gold, basically, we're trying to see whether we can get some sales. Right now, we're within a support region. Let's see what these guys have. Let's see how far they can push the market. But in terms of looking for the sales, it's not really a good area. You end up looking for your selling opportunities. And also in terms of buys, I wouldn't really say that it's a good time for you to look for the buys. Just because you are support, consider the sellers are still pushing hard. No sign of the big buyers just yet. So even in terms of counters, don't really be smart and try and see whether you can get a counter here, because you could find that the market could easily end up becoming sluggish, and you could easily end up getting caught up in a trade within here only to eventually end up getting stopped out. So ideally the bus is to calm down with this one. So hopefully you can end up taking note or taking a screenshot of that. That's what the plan is going to be. So I hope that sorts you out, Esther. It's really good to see you here. And thank you so much for joining us. So I guess that's pretty much it. Let me just see anything I've missed out.
No question.
All right. So I guess that's what the plan is going to be looking like. And remember, you can always watch and rewatch this stuff on YouTube. You can even increase the speed, watch it faster. If you want to, maybe you can end up picking up a couple of things that you missed out here and there. So that's the advantage of this. And hopefully we'll see you guys in the next weekly swing. And of course, I know since we do see quite a number of you in our other sessions as well, hopefully we'll end up seeing you there as well for the daily analysis and also for the intermediate, which is going to be starting off tomorrow. So the August session starts off tomorrow. So make sure that you do end up planning to join us if you can. Scope markets from 4 to 6. Session 1 starts off tomorrow. Session 2 the week after that on the 22nd. And the third session on the 29th. So even if you come in for an intermediate or 2 before, feel free to come in as well, and also feel free to bring in a friend as well. So I guess that's pretty much it from us. Just will see you guys in the next weekly swing, and of course in between the online or physical. So until then, there's a future to you. Guys, bye.